Yum, yum!
Hey guys, Greg here from Pixel Fondue. I am going to be talking about the Geodesic Weight mesh operation, and that it was released in MODO 15.2, and it's got an interesting way of procedurally creating weight maps, and so I think it's worth a look. And I'm actually also going to work in a schematic on this one instead of the weight or mesh op stack you normally work in over here, because there's some cool new schematic improvements in 15.2 as well. So let's just start this off by dragging my mesh over here and put space and type torus into mini properties, because I'm going to use a torus to demonstrate this. And then I'm going to add a mesh op stack. So mesh op stack, and that's going to be the first modifier I lay down. You can actually see that over here in the mesh op stack, again, if you like to work over here. You may want to get used to using this. I think it debuted in 15.1, but it's a nice way of organizing your mesh ops. And it in this little package here, but it also has some really nice schematic features as well. So if you twirl this down, you'll see a little plus here. And so I can click that, and I can get my add mesh operation preset browser here. But I can also just grab this little purple guy and drag it off to an open space and let go, and I get it as well, which I actually kind of prefer this. So if I start off with a toroid, just add that in here, and then I'm going to press C for channel hall. And if you haven't gotten used to channel hall yet, or omni hall, it's really worthwhile getting into it. And remember, in omni hall, right mouse button on primitives and bevels and pretty much everything is always adding segments. So right mouse button up down will drag these vertical, you get more vertical segments. Left right horizontal, get more segments there. We just want a lot of segments to really show off this weight map, right? Because the more higher density of the vertices you have, the more sort of resolution you have in your weight map. So press C to drop the omni hall, and then again I'm just going to grab the purple thing, drag out, let go, and type in Geodesic and add my Geodesic weight modifier, and there we go. So a couple things about this. You'll notice it has an input array, and that's what we're going to be talking about mostly in this video. And you can type in a map name. It just Geodesic is the default. That's fine. We can just leave it, or we could type something else in there. But if I go over to Vertex Maps and take a look under weight maps, you'll notice there's nothing there yet. That's because we haven't given an input array. So an array is just a list of things, right? So it can be a list of vertices on a curve. It could be a list of particles or points. It could be a list of locators. And that's going to determine our weight map. It's going to be a procedurally generated weight map based on this array. So let's just start off with a locator. I'm going to press L to add a locator to my scene. You can also do add item and just type in a locator here. And L is just a nice little shortcut. And then I'm going to drag that into the schematic. And I need a new node in between these two. So I hit add. And under array, I'll see locators to array. I'll double click that and bring it in. So one of the things is this really awesome thing of just clicking this and letting go only works in the mesh op stack. So yeah, I really hope they do that with the rest of the schematic, like all the other nodes, where you can do that with any of these, because it would be great just to drag this out to space and get the preset browser, but that's not how it's working right now. Anyway, so this array, locators to array, is going to plug into the input array. We're going to plug our locator into the locators slot here. And again, it's just a list, so we can have more than one. But you'll notice that once I've done this, and I select my torus and take a look at my VMap here, now the geodesic weight shows up. And if I select it, we should see it in our viewport here. Now, if I'm using the advanced viewport, which I tend to like, and if you press O, if you're not seeing a weight map, just go under Active Mesh tab, just make sure Show Weights is on, Show Weight Maps is on, you'll be able to see it there. So there's our weight map, and this is a little interesting how this works. So here's our locator, and if I drag my locator, let's say, over here, you'll notice the weight map sort of moves away from it, right? So I'm sort of dragging it up to sit on top of it. And so the area around the locator has no weight, and the area farthest from the locator has a weight of 1. And that is if you have this normalization button pushed here. So if this normalization button is pushed, it'll take the farthest point away and make that 1 and sort of gradiate everything in between. If it's not pushed, I believe anything over like 1 meter gets a value of 1. That's why it's sort of, it's all blocked out, all red right there. So we'll keep that on. Triangulate mesh, I'm not even, I'm turning it off, it doesn't even work, so I'm not quite sure. Seems like it has to be triangulated for it to travel along all these vertices and determine where, the farthest point from the array there, but okay, we'll leave it at that. We can also invert it here, which may seem more useful, where you really want the weight to be where your locator is, and so when I move my locator, I'm moving the weight around because maybe that's where I want all the action to happen, like whether I use this for shading or mesh operations. So it may be normal to have this inverted on a lot. I'm actually going to click it off because I'm going to add a remap weight modifier right above it. So I'm going to add remap weight, and you'll see that's going to come on here, and it's going to ask for the map name. So I'm going to type in Geodesic. I wish there was just a drop down there I could pick from, but you have to actually type it in. And you'll notice that it automatically inverted, and that's because the remap weight modifier, again, like I think this is a little weird, it automatically, it defaults to inverting it. So normally you would think it would default to just not doing anything and then let you adjust it, but instead it defaults to inverting it. Not a big deal, it's still a little weird, but we're actually going to do that anyway. In fact, I'm going to, now that I have this key over here selected, I'm going to right click and drag and just tighten this up, right? So I'm just tightening up the weight around my locator there. Okay. All right, so that's that. And let's just add in something like, I don't know, like a bevel, like a polygon bevel, just to show you how this works. So we got to, whoops, if I can type in polygon bevel, and there it is. And I will then actually want one more node here. So I'm going to want to add a weight map fall off right there at the top. Weight map fall off, because I'm going to use this weight map recreated as a fall off. So let me just plug this in to the tool pipe. That's where fall offs go on these nodes. They go into the tool pipe. And you just pick the weight map from the dropdown, Geodesic. And again, this is some inconsistencies that sort of annoy me. Like the remap weight, I had to type in Geodesic, but for the weight map fall off, I pick it from a dropdown. It'd be nice to see that stuff sort of, you know, standardized. Anyway, let's go back to our polygon bevel here. I can press C for channel haul, and if you remember, up is pushing things out. And then actually, let me press space to bring up mini props. Now, if you press space and nothing happens, it probably means you have more than one item selected. So let me press space again. If I have two items selected here, and I try to press space, nothing happens. It only likes it if you have one item selected or all items of the same type. Like if you have 4 point lights selected, you can bring up mini props. One thing you can do to quickly clear out your selections is just hit escape a couple of times, right? It'll clear it out and you can start over and only have one thing selected. So I find myself hitting escape a lot when I work in MODO nowadays. I think there's probably a better way to do this. Hopefully we'll see some improvements in the future. But right now, escape key is a good friend of yours if you like mini props. All right, so I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to turn off group polygons, and I can kind of see what's going on a little bit better. And then C for channel haul, if I press up, I'm changing the inset, and if I go left, right, I'm changing, I'm sorry, up is shift and left, right is inset. So I'm getting some, interesting little polygon beveling action going on there. And you see how that's working with that locator. And so the weight map actually has a locator as well. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm not sure why it has a locator. You can't do anything with it, but it puts one in the scene. So you could turn it off. It'll still be active. That's fine. And we could select this locator. And again, if I drag this around, the weight map will go with it. And so will the bevels. All right, so makes sense, looking good. And what's cool is, like I said, an array is just a list. So I can Control D, duplicate my locators here. Now I've got 2 in the exact same place, but if I want to press W for move and drag one over here, now I've got 2 of them going on. So I'm procedurally sort of creating this weight map on the fly with these locators, right? So these locators are feeding into my geodesic weight modifier. It's looking at points that are farthest away from it. If I turn off my remap weight, also what's cool about, again, the schematic and the mesh off stack is I have my little eyeballs here. I don't need to go over here if I don't want to and start eyeballing things on and off if I don't want to. I can actually keep it closed and I can just eyeball off my remap weight, right? And so here you go. We've got, one locator here and one locator here, and the points farthest from the locators get the most, weight or the most bevel. But we're actually going to invert those with our remap weight and just kind of keep them located, the action happening near the locators. All right, looking good. So let's try a different kind of array. So I've got my 2 locators there. I'm actually going to unplug that. So we're going to have nothing going on when I unplug this one. And whoops, if I can unplug it there, now it's just beveling everything. So why don't I turn off bevel for now. And I'm actually going to just press 2 for edge mode and select an edge here, and then up here, and actually let me pop open my little direct modeling tools here, and under the edge tab, let's do edges to curves, click that, and we will click create a new mesh. Spline curve is fine, hit OK. Now we have a new mesh over here. It's a curve mesh, and you can see that gray curve there, so I'm going to drag that over here. And then under our array list, we also have a curves to array. So double click that guy, and you can imagine what we're going to do. We're going to plug our curve into our curves right there, and then our output is going to go into the Geodesic's input array. There we go. Now we've got the curve, right? And so this curves to array has sampling essentially, right? So there's 20 steps. You can see the little axes here. That's a little knot every, there's 20 steps in there. So there's 20 little knots, and each one of those knots creates, is a point on this array that is being measured with the Geodesic array modifier. Now you notice, you can see the points, there's some, you can see if I just unclick this, that it looks like little dots, right? And so if I want to make that more filled out, I just increase the steps, go to 40 or even 60, and my little, dot-like pattern is gone now. So it's pretty smooth because there's a lot more, sample points there now. Okay, looks good. So if I turn back on my polygons, it'll be right around the middle there. Now you can do a lot with these because there's actually a lot of array nodes. So I can go in here and do array, and I could say, I don't know, let's do something here. Let's do, I think, filter array is what I want. So let's try filter array. So I'm going to plug my array into filter array, and I can plug that into the input array. And looking at my filter array here, I have an init range, and you just see dot, dot, dot. Now, dot, dot, dot means everything. So everything's being fed to it. It's just passing on. But I can type in like, let's see, we've got 60 different steps here. So let's do like 0 to 30, 0-30. And now it's just taking the first 30 of those, right? So I've got even more control, more procedural control over where I want these weights to go. And there's all kinds of different array nodes here. There's just a bunch of stuff, and there's some more powerful ones that, honestly, like array operator, which I should really learn to use a little more. Should probably do a tutorial on that. So, but anyways, there's filter arrays, so you see what's going on here. You can even blend arrays. Like I think I can just blend in my locators as well if I want to. So I'll just select this noodle here because I want to put something in between these, and we'll add this and do blend arrays, array blend. So we'll do that. And, oh, it didn't connect like I thought it would. That's fine. Input A will be my filtered curve array, and input B will be my locator array. And I will replace that input there with that. And now I'm getting a little blend between both locators and the curve here. And I believe I have some counts, so I can maybe bump that up for more sampling. Same kind of thing. I can even do some easing here. And there's just, oh, these little easing curves are great. There's just a lot of control over what I'm going to be doing with my weight map, right? Okay, so there's that. And let's try one more thing. I'm just going to select my toroid here, go 1 for vertice mode. I'm just going to pick some vertices. I'm kind of grabbing multiple vertices here. Let me just grab 1, 1, 1. We've got maybe 4 of them there. Control C for copy. Hovering over the item list, press N for a new item mesh, and just Control V those in there. It just that's what I like about MODO. It just works almost like Photoshop, but with points and polygons and items and stuff. So we'll call these points like that, and I'll drag that into here. And as you may have surmised, there is a points to array or particles to array nodes. We'll do particles to array, and MODO is smart enough to look at points and say, okay, those are just some freestanding points or just some points, and you're throwing it into my particles node. I'm going to assume you want those points to be particles, and I'll put that into the array here. And now everywhere that those little vertices are, we actually have the bevel popping up. So there you go. Okay, what else can we do? Let's move our points around a little bit just to sort of space these out. Looks kind of neat. Of course, all this stuff can be animated and everything else. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not really giving a use case. I'm just kind of showing what you can do with this. And I can add, I can add another, let's add a deformer. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to do push. And so in MODO, there's a push mesh operation with a little gear here, and that's a modeling operation. But there's also a push influence, which is a deformer, which they do essentially the same thing, but they're a little bit different. And I'm just showing you that this works with deformers as well as modeling operations. So let me just kind of pull these down. Push influence here. Of course, my push influence has a fall off slot. And so now on mesh operations, they don't have a fall off slot, but fall offs go into the tool pipe. But deformers have a slot explicitly named fall off. So it does the exact same thing. I'm just going to plug it in there. And so we're doing fall offs on the push. And so push, if you press C for channel haul or omni haul, that's a map to distance. You just left mouse and push, and left, right, and there you go. So now we're pushing. We're actually pushing after the bevel right now. So it's kind of, actually kind of cool looking. Actually, let me do this. Let's go to Polygon Bevel, and there's a plus minus here, so we can get a little randomization. So for inset is 9, let's do plus minus 3 millimeters, and maybe 0.030 millimeters for the shift, just to get some randomization in there. And then I'm gonna turn off the push, and you can see these are a little more random now, right? So random inset, random or shift. And I'm actually, you can, like I said, you can do a lot of stuff down here. Not only can you turn these on and off, but you can also reorder them. So I can drag the push underneath the Polygon Bevel, and I can, if I want to, I can be all nice and neat and do it there too. But I just dragged it under just like I would in the mesh operation stack. So kind of what we're seeing here, let me grab my torus so it shows up. Whoops. What we're seeing here is the ability, you know, typically in MODO, it's like stack was for order, right? So bottom up order, just like the shading tree, bottom up order. And the schematic was for connections. But what we're seeing now is we're able to control order in the schematic as well as the stacks. You don't really have to work in the stack if you don't want to. And you can adjust order in the schematic using a mesh op stack as your base node there. So that's pretty cool. It looks like a little bug with that eyeball not coming on and off, but it's definitely supposed to be on. I wonder if I click it on and off in the stack here, if that'll fix it. That might be a little 15.2 bug. Off, on, turn this, see if it, doesn't want to draw it on. That's a little display bug, but it's on. And you can, you can kind of see it's being pushed, and then it's being beveled, right? There's the push, there's the bevel, looking pretty good. So what else should we do with this? Well, you can use weight maps for shading as well. So let's, let's just turn on a preview here and get this camera in a slightly better looking position there, like so. And I hate that default light. Just turn that off. All right, so on my torus, I'm just going to right click and say shade, create item mask. So instead of creating a polygon mask, we'll just create a mask for the entire item. And then I'm going to add a couple constant layers here. So not concrete, constant. And we'll do this one maybe sort of blue. And then I'm just going to right click duplicate. Oh, I think I can control deduplicate. And then go maybe pink, boom, or fuchsia, whatever that is. And then I'm going to add a vertex map texture right there. And on my drop down, it's already selecting geodesic weight. So you can see it using that for shading, but I'm actually going to use it as a mask just by dragging it on top of the second constant. And I've hit the little plus here. You can see it is now a layer mask. And, just like in After Effects or in Photoshop. And there you go. So now I'm masking this texture with this, doing some procedural shading with this procedural weight map that we created. So I grab this point, and I'm just moving around that point again, that little particle. You can see it moving around. Now, it'll work with other particle systems. It'll actually work with a particle simulation, but it'll be slow. Let me just kind of show you how that works. Let's do like a PMOD or something, right? So I'm going to add item and do a particle generator right here. And this lets you create an array or a radial array. Let's do a radial array. So put it on radial. Now, the downside of a particle generator is you can't actually see the particles anywhere unless you add a replicator. So again, I'd kind of like, it's been that way forever. I'd like to see that change. So on the replicator, the point source will be that particle generator we just created. And then for the prototype, I'm just going to just hold shift and create a default sphere, and then double click the polygons. Make sure you scale the polygons and not the item. We want to scale the polygons down for the replicator. The replicator will ignore the item transforms on it. So for the replicator's prototype, we want that sphere. So that's where we've got, right there now, if you look, this is, the particle generator just has 4 particles. So I can select that, and you can see with OmniHaul, it defaults to left click. So press C, and I could just drag to the left and get more particles there. So where there's a sphere, there's a particle, because that's how our replicator is working. And then I can, for the radius, when I just left swipe up for up down, so I'll go like this just to get them all on there. And then I'm going to drag my particle generator into the schematic and I'm just going to drag the little purple guy into the particle source for this array, and there we go, right? So now those little particles, in fact, if I count, let's turn this back to like 10 or something, and there we go, right? So, and if I hide my torus, you can see the replicator is still there. I don't really need that, so I'll turn it off. But so that's pretty cool, right? So we can use a particle, array, or like a particle generator into the array. I can use points. I can use a particle simulation. All that stuff, and you can get some pretty cool, feed those as fall-offs into deformers or fall-offs into mesh operations like the bevel here, deformers like the push, or you can deal with the, feed them into shading networks. There's just a lot you can do with it, and you have all these different array nodes like array blend. So if I want to bring our locators back into this, maybe I blend my particle source as input A, and locators are already input B, and I could drag that in there. Now my locators are in there. They can all be animated and blah blah blah. So there's a lot you can do with this. I suggest you experiment with it. It is slower to calculate sometimes. I mean, if you got a lot of points in there and you're feeding in a lot of stuff in an array, especially like a particle system where it's changing every frame and maybe thousands of particles, it's going to have, has to measure the distance between every point to every particle. It can be slow, but just this kind of abstract art is pretty cool like this. So I'll leave it here, and mess around geodesic array or geodesic weight and see if you can create some stuff with that.
Yum, yum!